I call to order the meeting of the Verona Common Council for Monday, February 24th, 2025 at 7 p.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll have the roll.
Alderperson Braithwaite.
Here.
Alderperson Harrison.
Here.
Alderperson Helmke. Here. Alderperson Hoaxed.
Present.
Alderperson Kaiser McHenry. Alderperson Lytle.
Here.
Alderperson Posey.
Here.
Alderperson Tucker Long.
Here.
All right, everyone's here. Thank you. We will proceed with the agenda. Item 4 is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so.
Good evening. I'm Dan O'Callahan. I'm appearing tonight on behalf of Forward Development Group regarding item 11B, the Whispering Coves development. Some may recall that we were here in this room last February with a proposal to move the installation of the force main, part of the regional stormwater system for this neighborhood, from phase 1 to phase 2 of the project. After deliberating, the council declined to make that change, instead insisting that the force main be installed as part of phase 1. So over the last year, that's exactly what Forward Development Group did. They had their contractor, Parisi Construction, complete the force main along with the other phase 1 improvements. So we're pleased to appear before you tonight to report that all of the phase 1 public improvements have been substantially completed. Prior to this meeting, you received a letter from Parisi confirming substantial completion, along with a letter from JSD, the project engineer, certifying the same. 2 weeks ago, on February 12th, we had an on-site meeting with city staff to conduct a preliminary inspection of the completed improvements. That inspection yielded a 2-page list of items that either need to be finished or repaired, which is included as Addendum 2 to the proposed amendment in your packets tonight. The amendment is intended to address several concerns, several changes to the plans that were approved by the city engineer during the course of construction, and to reflect that the wetland restoration project is a 5-year plan, not a 1-year plan. The amendment also addresses the remaining work that was identified during the preliminary site inspection. We appreciate the significant time and resources staff have devoted to the Whispering Coves project, and we appreciate their efforts in drafting the proposal that's in your packet tonight. We agree with that proposed amendment with one important exception. The draft in your packet requires some of the open items on Addendum 2 to be resolved prior to building permit issuance, while other items have a June 30th deadline for completion. On behalf of Forward Development, we're asking the Council to apply the June 30th deadline to all of the work summarized on Addendum 2, and allowing building permits for Phase 1 to move forward in the meantime. Parisi would be back out there tomorrow finishing up that list, if it were that simple. Unfortunately, many of the items on the list are best done after the spring thaw, so we're stuck now waiting for weather conditions to improve. Regardless, we believe the request to move forward with building permits at this time is a reasonable one in light of the fact that the contractor and the project engineer have certified that the required public improvements are substantially complete, if not yet 100% complete. There are a couple of benefits to making the edits that we propose. First, allowing building permits now means that Forward Development will be able to close out Phase 1 sooner, thereby being in a position to deliver full lien waivers to the city sooner. Second, allowing building permits now means that planning for the next phase of development, which requires collaboration between Forward Development Group and neighboring property owners, can happen sooner. And third, allowing building permits now means that families who have been patiently waiting for Forward Development Group to finish the public improvements can begin building their new homes in Verona sooner. And while there are certainly benefits to moving ahead with the changes that we're requesting, we think it's important to consider whether there are any risks or downsides. We don't believe there are, but we want to hear any concerns that you may have. First, we don't believe there's a financial risk to the city because the city holds a $3.6 million letter of credit from the developer, which you'll hold until the very last piece of work is completed, inspected, and accepted by your engineer. Second, we don't believe that moving forward with this request would set a bad precedent. The contractor and the project engineer have both certified to the city that construction is substantially complete. Yes, there's a list of additional work that needs to be done, and a list of repairs that need to be completed. But this is typical of any large construction project of this nature. While we believe each project in the city ought to be evaluated on its own merits, we would hope you'd reach the same conclusion for any other project that came before you after achieving substantial completion. And finally, the project engineer has represented to the city in writing that all of the improvements, including the stormwater system, will function properly while the remaining items are addressed. Everybody has long understood that developing this area of the city is a complex undertaking, especially because of that regional stormwater solution that needs to be brought to this area. The first phase of that system is now substantially complete, and on behalf of Forward Development Group, we'd like to thank you, Mayor Diaz, and members of the council for your leadership and for your cooperation and partnership in helping us reach this important milestone. We're excited to continue moving the neighborhood forward, and we respectfully request that you approve the proposed amendment in your packet tonight with the changes we've requested. Thank you.
Thank you. We're still in public comment. If any other members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so.
Good evening. My name is Hans Justison, and I am the Director of Engineering with JSD Professional Services. I've been with JSD for 26 years and been providing professional services for land development for 30-plus years. In fact, my very first subdivision was here in the city of Verona, the Plat of Raywood, off of Nine Mountain Road for Fred Nelson in 1993. I'll let you do the math. Used to be a mink farm. Our firm, in various capacities, has been involved with the North Neighborhood Development since 2010. Earlier today, you were provided with a letter from JSD indicating our support for the amendment being proposed by city staff, including the one proposed change by the developer, Forward Development Group. The nominal amount of remaining work and related warranty work are very typical and should not cause the building permits to be delayed. All other items are completed and functioning properly. The letter provided adequately summarizes our thoughts, so I take this opportunity to thank you for your time, consideration with this, and attention to this matter. And I'm available should you have any questions as you discuss the request tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so if any other members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Winding. I'm the listing agent over for Whispering Coves. It's an exciting, I don't know how well you guys know it, but it's a super exciting project. It's a unique neighborhood design, unlike anything else that you will see in Dane County. It is something that Verona will absolutely be proud of. It'll put you guys on the map a little bit. We currently have 12 accepted offers on lots. People have been waiting to build for like the last 2 years. Have endured a whole bunch of things in terms of, having to release apartments, sometimes not being able to. They've endured increased costs and construction costs and interest rates and things like that. So there's definitely been some pain. We've actually had some pain ourselves because some people have said, look, I can't wait to build anymore. I'm canceling my contract. I'm going to another community where I can get things going faster. So it's been painful for us too because we really wanted them to be building with us. Anyway, we're just really hopeful that you guys would consider allowing us to have building permits so we can get going. It'll allow you guys, again, to get this great neighborhood started for Verona. It will increase your tax base, obviously. Being in real estate, we all know how painful it has been with some, we're just so short on housing stock. And so to be able to build more housing, we just really need it. So thank you in advance for your consideration.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so if any other members of the public wish to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Connor Kearney here with Forward Development Group. I won't restate any further details since the prior comments covered a great deal already, but I just wanted to reiterate our appreciation to consider this request and for the continued review of Whispering Coves. The project dates back to well before my time at FDG. And while it may have a complex history, I can say with confidence that I'm excited to look at the project through a fresh lens and look forward to seeing the next steps, seeing that original vision become a reality, active with homes and families. I think it's easy to get hung up on past challenges, but council is reviewing a very different project tonight than nearly 1 year ago that was discussed in this very room. Substantial progress has been made. Over 1,400 linear feet of force main has been installed, in addition to numerous other items. We're committed to continuing that momentum and firmly believe the project is ready for home construction. The decision this evening is an important one for the community. Prior to the meeting, we had shared letters of support via email from various groups, one of which being the Madison Area Builders Association. Content aside, the key takeaway from a letter like that is the importance that these home sites carry within the community. We kindly ask for that to be considered when making a decision this evening. Should there be any questions for FDG when the agenda item arrives, I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you again.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so if any other members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so. All right, not seeing anyone approaching the microphone, we will move to item 5, which is approval of the minutes from the February 10th, 2025 Common Council meeting. Comments, questions, corrections, or motions to approve? Alder Tucker Long.
I would like to move that we approve them with one correction. In item 3, there is a caret instead of a period. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but just so you know. Okay.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Last chance for other corrections. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the February 10th, 2025 Common Council meeting with the correction noted by Alder Tucker Long signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the minutes are approved. Next up, we have item 6, which is mayor's business. Don't have anything for you tonight. So we will move on to item 7, which is announcements. Any announcements from the council? Seeing no announcements, we will move on to item 8, which is the administrator's report. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know about you, I always liked wingdings as a font, so I don't know how that carrot snuck in there, but regardless. I just wanted to let everyone know, elected officials, the public, that we're starting an e-newsletter. It's going to go out the first Monday of each month, and it can be found on the homepage of the city website. It's under Popular Resources, and you'll see city newsletter, a city newsletter button on there, and feel free to subscribe to that. And just one other announcement, Ian, who works in our Parks Department, became a certified arborist. That's a 200-question test, a lot of study, and so we have an arborist now working in our Parks Department, so congratulations to Ian. Other than that, and my love of wingdings, that's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Aulick? Seeing no questions, we will move on to item 9, which is the engineer's report. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. For the Country View Road projects, excavation on the wet ponds is continuing, along with utility relocates. For the Legion Street reconstruction project, there's a bid opening for that project tomorrow. The Mark Drive design project continues and moves toward 90% deliverable. And Ardent Glen, I think I mentioned this last time, but we've been working closely with the developer and their engineer on phases 3B, 4, and 5, and that includes a water main extension. And then I also noted that the Plant Dane Native Plant Program is currently accepting orders, and so that's a program that's open to Dane County residents, and you can get native plants at a discounted price, and it's $3 a plant or $12 for a 4-pack, and that's about half the normal retail price. So you'll order, I think, through March 18th, or while supplies last, up to 35,000 plants sold, and then you pick up in May. And I've done it myself. It's a great deal. So with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fisher? Seeing no questions, we will move on to item 10, which is committee reports. First up, we have 10A Finance Committee. Alder Humke.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for payment of the bills in the amount of $20,720,824.36.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Posey. Alder Humke.
Yeah, so the biggest piece here is the February tax settlements with the Verona Area School District, Dane County, and MATC. Those three pieces total $20,347,108.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on the motion to pay the bills? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of paying the bills in the amount specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Humke.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to deny the claim from Kristen Strasser for the sub pump.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Posey. Alder Humke.
Kristen Strasser submitted a claim for a sub pump and associated installation in the amount of $454.58. The claim was submitted on January 29th, 2025. CIVMIC, the city's insurance carrier, recommended denying the claim for two reasons. First, the claim should be denied under Wisconsin Statute 893.80, which states that notice of a claim is to be made within 120 days after the event giving rise to the claim. This claim is not within statute and should be denied. Second point is the claim is the result of excessive rainfall within a short period of time. 4.7 inches of rain fell on May 24th, as documented in historical weather records. This would indicate that the damage was caused by an act of God, an extreme weather event that cannot be foreseen or controlled, rather than by the negligence of the city. Staff recommended denial of the claim.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of denying the claim from Kristen Strasser regarding the sub pump signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Finance?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. With that, we move on to 10B, which is Public Safety and Welfare Committee. Alder Host.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the School Resource Officer Program Agreement by and between the City of Verona and the Verona Area School District.
Motion by Alder Host. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Alder Host.
Thank you. The full agreement is on pages 23 to 28 of the packet, so it's rather lengthy, but I've got a couple of select provisions to share. A term of 1 year, one-year period beginning July 1st, 2025, continuing until June 30th, 2026. The Chief of Police shall select and assign the SRO. The SRO is an employee of the city and will report to the police department. The cost of the school resource officer is shared between the school district and the city using an 80-20 split. So the school district pays 80% and the city is on the hook for 20%. Overtime is paid by the entity that authorizes the overtime. Also, the SRO will provide a data report twice annually within 1 month of the end of the semester. Things in that report include the number of citations issued for that time period, other data. Both the city and the school district staff worked cooperatively on the agreement, and the city staff recommend approval. As of course, Chief Dresser is here to give more details and answer questions.
Thank you. Chief Dresser.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening. So I'm happy to present this MOU to you today. Just a little bit of history. I'm asking, or we're looking at putting a school resource officer into the high school. Prior to that position becoming the school resource officer, we used to refer to that officer as a police school liaison officer, PSL. It started in 1998. Steve Zimmer at the time was our officer. He retired here as a sergeant, but we had an officer in the school for about 20 years. The last signed contract we had with the Verona School District was in 2019. In 2020, we could not reach a successor agreement, and there were a few reasons for that. One, we were going into COVID. Two, there's a brand new high school that was sitting empty because of COVID. The political climate at the time, and the school district had hired a security director and security staff. So fast forward 5 years, and here we are today. Both the school district and the city are interested in having an officer in the school again with the title of school resource officer. We're choosing that title because that was common throughout Dane County. PSL did not seem to trend when we decided on that 20 years ago. I have with me Lieutenant Matt Dart. He's a lieutenant of patrol operations, and he will be supervising the SRO and also Deputy Superintendent Chad Weezy from the school district, in case you have any questions from those two gentlemen. So we have reached a successor agreement, I'm happy to announce. We feel good about it. Working with Superintendent Dr. Clarity and Deputy Superintendent Chad Weezy has been great. They've been great to work with, renewed relationship and level of trust necessary where both sides know that this will be successful. Also, our interaction with Principal Cox at the high school has been great, and he came from an environment where he did have school resource officers and was an advocate for such. I have 3 officers currently who are interested in the position. That is the opposite of what we had back in 2018 when I had 0 officers interested, and we literally had to order an officer to work in the school, which is not ideal. So I'm happy to say that things have changed all around as far as the climate and the level of interest. Some of the changes that you'll see in the MOU compared to what we had back in 2019, item 4 is that the school district, they are going to retain security staff, and we view that as a win-win situation. They've had security for several years now. Their security is trained in disrupting skirmishes, if you will, and assisting students, and we would like to see that continued. Now, having said that, if a fight breaks out in the presence of our police officer, we will be required to intervene just to prevent injuries. But the idea is that we would then hand the students off to security so they could do what they currently do today. Also, we think that having that model of having security involved, law enforcement won't necessarily investigate the fights like we used to, unless we are approached by a student or a family, there's an injury, and they want an investigation, and so that will reduce unnecessary police contact or investigations, which again, I think is a win-win. Item number 23, the cost standard. Historically, the city paid, or the school district paid 60% while school was in session, and the city paid 40%. That's been upped with this MOU. The school district will now pay 80%, the city will pay 20%. That 20% is appropriate because there will be times when the SRO will not be in school because of training, sick leave, vacation leave, Kelly days, and so it would be appropriate for the city to pay that percentage of the cost. Our primary goal is security. Unfortunately, the world we live in today, we don't have to think back too far. Incident that happened in Mount Horeb last summer and the Abundant Life Christian School, that's fresh on all of our minds, and that is a huge motivator for us wanting to have an officer back in the school for that presence. It is a known fact that schools that have a school resource officer in the school, it deters acts of violence. And so we're looking forward to having that deterrent, but beyond that, building the relationships. It's been a tough 5 years for us not having our foot in the door at the school district and having the ability to build those relationships with the students and the staff, and we're really looking forward to that. And then mentoring. One of our last school resource officers, or PSL at the time, a student wrote him a letter professing how much he had changed her life. And reading that letter honestly just would bring a tear to your eye on the difference that that officer made to that student. And I know that happens every year, we just don't necessarily see it. And so those are the positive differences that we're striving for. And to personalize it, of course, everybody knows here that I'm a hometown boy. I graduated from the Verona High School, and I put 2 students through the Verona High School. So I am passionate about the Verona High School and want to do everything possible to maintain security there and a relationship with those that attend there. So any questions about the MOU?
Any questions from the council? Alder Humke.
I just have a question. If the officer is being trained or off-site, like, is there just won't be a resource SRO in the building, then there isn't going to be like someone else coming in to take their place when they're, on the days that they might be gone, for like on vacation or training?
Typically, no. So the way the MOU is written, that if it's a week or under, that position will not be backfilled, and it was purposely written that way because we did have some staffing challenges trying to find an appropriate person to backfill, because there is going to be a selection process between the police department and the school. We'll be involved in that selection process, so we want to make sure we have the right person in place. And so the days where we would backfill, we just don't want to put a random officer up there. We certainly could, but we want to make sure it's the right fit. And so the MOU allows for a week. If it's greater than a week, then we will have to look at our options for backfilling.
Yeah, I like that policy. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the MOU? Anything else to add?
No, that was it. Thank you.
All right, well, we have a motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Alder Humke and then myself.
Yeah. Hold on one second. So I've known about this for a while because it was included in the budget. I know that in the past, the relationship with the police and the school district has been mixed, and I am grateful that you have worked together to form a more solid relationship. I think it's really important. I understand, I'm a parent of 2 high schoolers at Verona Area High School, and I just want to say to Mr. Weesey, like, my kids really, the security staff of the school are excellent. I'm glad that we have that in place. I think it's really important. My kids feel secure. They know the security staff. They know when there's people in the building who shouldn't be there, just by facial recognition, because that's how good they are. So although I'm not necessarily personally in favor of the officer, I understand the concern of the people in the community who are worried about shootings like at Abundant Life and at Mount Horeb. And so with that, I do want to talk about, just in general, that this is one method of preventing gun violence in our schools. Another method of preventing gun violence is promoting safe gun ownership and responsible gun ownership, safe storage. The police department offers gun locks for free. People can come in and get those. The school district has promoted the Be Smart program, which talks about how the community, right, we're all a part of the school district being safe. Every single person here, whether you have a kid in the district or not, can be a responsible gun owner. And so that's a piece that the community needs to really own as well. And I just want to highlight that. I would really like our public safety to encourage the Be Smart program as well. Just I think it's a really important message, and it would be aligned with what the school district is sharing. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think it's good for the school district and that we're doing all the right things to put this in place properly.
Calling on myself, I just want to thank the Verona Police Department and the Verona Area School District for a very well thought out proposal. I think there'll probably have to be adjustments, or no good plan survives contact with reality. But I think this was a really well thought out proposal, and I'm super excited to see it implemented. Other questions or comments from the council? Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor of approving the School Resource Officer Program Agreement by and between the City of Verona and the Verona Area School District signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Safety?
Nothing further, thank you.
Excellent. With that, we'll move on to 10C, which is Public Works, Sewer, and Water Committee. Alder Tucker Long.
I would like to move to approve the granting of a 10-foot utility easement across Outlot 7 of Ardent Glen Plat.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Braithwaite. Alder Tucker Long.
So this plat update was requested by Alliant Energy for an easement across Outlot 7 of Ardent Glen. What this is doing is providing a straight path for the utility line installation. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor of granting the 10-foot utility easement across Outlot 7 of the Ardent Glen Plat signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Tucker Long.
I would like to move to approve the inspection services contract for Country View Road Phases 2 and 3, project number 2023-121 with JT Engineering for a cost not to exceed $193,497.50.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Alder Tucker Long.
So Country View Road Phases 2 and 3 will be constructed this year. Staff recommends contracting construction inspection services with JT Engineering. JT Engineering has inspected the previous phase of construction and is currently contracted on multiple other projects with the city. All fees associated with these inspection services are the responsibility of the developer. Staff recommends approval of the inspection services contract.
You've heard the explanation. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the inspection services contract for Country View Road Phases 2 and 3, which is project 2023-121 with JT Engineering in the not to exceed amount, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Tucker Long.
I move to approve the contract for reconstruction of well number 6 with Water Well Solutions LLC for a cost not to exceed $378,500.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Alder Tucker Long.
Well number 6 was constructed in 2019. The well is currently not in service due to elevated nitrate levels. This reconstruction will eliminate the pumping of elevated nitrate water from the upper aquifer by permanently sealing and separating the upper and lower aquifers. I also want to note that the DNR has reviewed and approved this.
Thank you. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Alder Lytle.
I don't know if this is a question for the Public Works Committee or staff. Do we have, based on the testing that's been done, an idea of how much capacity this well is decreased by only drawing from the lower aquifer versus how it was originally designed? Is that, I'm not looking for exact numbers, but, you know, are we losing 40% or 20% or?
Ms. Fisher, Mr. Manning, I don't know who wants to take that one. I mean, if you know.
It shouldn't have an effect on the draw. All we're doing is separating the two aquifers. Right now, the casing didn't extend far enough down. So the plan all along was only to draw from the lower aquifer. But when we punched the hole through and extended the casing down, the upper aquifer was leaking into the lower aquifer, and that was creating the nitrate problem. So now we're going to extend the casing down and grout the well or the casing into place to separate the two aquifers. So we're only going to be drawing from the aquifer we were intending to draw from originally.
So that was more related to the way the well was constructed and maybe not necessarily knowing the subsurface conditions as far as we weren't deliberately drawing from both aquifers. That was
That was not the intent.
Okay.
The intent was only to draw from the lower, but in the course of construction, it left a gap where the upper could leak into the lower, and that's been causing the nitrate problems that we've been having. So now this is going to resolve that problem by extending the casing and sealing the casing with grout. So we're not going to be leaking from upper to lower, only drawing from the lower.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question as well. Can you talk a little bit about the ongoing testing that's done on water quality for our wells? Because, right, it's like, just a brief thing, but how do we know it's really fixed?
Sure. So all wells are required to be tested at a certain, I believe around 3 months. This one, until we get this one up and running and functioning how we want it to, the DNR has requested that has required us to be testing this one for every month. So we're going to continue the testing that we've been doing, but all water wells are tested to make sure that levels are within acceptable ranges.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the contract for the reconstruction of well number 6, Water Well Solutions LLC, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Works?
Nothing further.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item 11, which is new business. First up, we have 11A, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the amendment to the fifth addendum to the commercial lease for property located at 130 North Franklin Street. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. Redeemer Bible Fellowship was sent the notice of termination of lease on February 3rd, 2025. As I was asked to do in discussing a potential alternative date to terminate the lease, Redeemer Bible Fellowship requested the council consider allowing the lease to terminate earlier with 30 days' notice, with the rationale that if they find an alternative site, they will need to move quickly and it would be a hardship to make rent payments at 2 locations. The proposed amendment honors their request.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Humke, then Alder Tucker Long.
I'll move to approve the amendment to the fifth addendum to commercial lease for property located at 130 Franklin Street.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Host. Anything to add, Alder Humke?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because he read it, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Generally, under Robert's Rules of Orders, or how we generally do practice, the person who makes initial motion is supposed to be given first comment on the motion. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm good.
Alder Tucker Long.
I was just going to make the motion, which has already been done, but I will say that I'm in favor of this, and whatever we can do to make this transition easy for them, I'm in favor of.
Yeah, I'll call on myself real quick, and I agree with that sentiment that we should make it as easy as possible for the church to work something out. Motion before the body. Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment to the fifth addendum to the commercial lease for property located at 130 North Franklin Street signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to 11B, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the First Amendment to the Whispering Coves Phase 1 Development Agreement. And I would like to handle as much as we can of this in open session for transparency's sake, if we can. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. The proposed amendment is the result of an assessment of public improvements at Whispering Coves to determine if they are complete, incomplete, or deficient, and a number of staff meetings were conducted to assess remedies. Select elements of the First Amendment include incorporating conditions 1 through 5 approved by the City of Verona Public Works, Sewer, and Water Committee at its meeting on August 12, 2020, and Condition 6 shall no longer apply. Restoration of the wetland area on Outlot 1 and 2, Block 2, pursuant to plans approved by the city. Among other work, the developer shall complete a wetland restoration plan, obtain applicable Wisconsin DNR approval and permits, and complete the work. The wetland restoration work shall be completed pursuant to the plans approved by the city engineer. Consistent with Article 5, Section B of Phase 1 of the Phase 1 agreement and the subdivision ordinance, building permits for Phase 1 shall not be issued until the developer has complied with the provisions of the Phase 1 agreement. The developer has installed and the city has accepted for each phase the sanitary sewer main and laterals, the water main and laterals, the storm sewer and other storm water management facilities, the gravel base in the streets, and the curb, gutter, sidewalk, and lower layer of asphalt street pavement. And the developer has furnished lien waivers for all contractors. Addendum 2, enclosed, contains a list of work under the heading Whispering Coves Phase 1 work. And all of this work falls within the scope of the Phase 1 agreement and Section 3A of this amendment. Addendum 2 also contains a list of work under the heading Whispering Coves Phase 1B work. City staff are willing to recommend to the Common Council the following work be moved to a Phase 1B for Whispering Coves. Items include construct infiltration basin 6P, install plantings and establish basin vegetation, install plug-in CBC2-5 once vegetation is established, the force main pump house, wet well, grit manhole, install sluice gate, month of May delivery is expected, install permanent well hatch covers, April delivery expected, and provide temporary cover measures. Again, those were items that could be moved to Phase B in this 1B in this proposal. Assuming all other requirements identified in the Phase 1 agreement have been satisfied for the issuance of building permits for Phase 1 may be issued before the Phase 1B work is completed. The Phase 1B work shall be completed by the developer on or before June 30th, 2025. If the developer fails to complete the Phase 1B work on or before June 30th, 2025, the city may immediately draw on the letter of credit identified in the Phase 1 agreement and complete the Phase 1B work. Notwithstanding the preceding sentences, the Phase 1B work includes provide temporary cover measures, and this work shall be completed within 10 days of the execution of this amendment. Further, temporary cover shall be anchored via bolts or other similar measures as approved by the city engineer, such that the cover cannot be moved by unauthorized parties. Exhibit C to the Phase 1 agreement contains a summary of the Phase 1 improvements and lists a number of construction plans. Within 10 days of the execution of the amendment, the developer shall provide the city with updated plans that reflect the changes made to the improvements as identified in Section 1, 2, and Section 3C2 of this amendment, which updated plans are subject to the approval of the city engineer. Building permits for Phase 1 shall not be issued if the developer fails to comply with this Section 4. And the Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized.
Anything to add, Mr. Kleinmeyer?
Sure. As Jamie indicated, and I think as Mr. O'Callahan indicated on behalf of the developer, the vast majority of this proposed amendment is supported by both the developer and city staff. Certainly willing to answer any questions that you might have regarding some of the procedural nature of the agreement or Sections 1 and 2. The disagreement between, and I should say that it is city staff's recommendation that the Common Council approve the agreement as it was proposed in the email that I sent to you, and just so that the public is aware, it wasn't included in the packet because we hadn't, dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's, before the packet went out, and so that's why it went out separately. The disagreement really relates to when the building permits would be issued and what work still needs to be done. I've been working with the city since 2004. I'm not aware of, at any point in time, a question of whether or not work has been substantially completed coming before the Common Council. I do believe that this is a first. And I think the reason for that, and I should state that the agreement that we have for Whispering Coves is what I would call the standard public improvements agreement that the city has been using for as long as I can remember. And, the process of construction and inspection and acceptance and lien waivers and guarantee period, it's all pretty straightforward. I took 5 minutes today, just 5 minutes to look at my file. I got 10 agreements that we've executed since 2021, and this agreement was executed in 2021, all of which relate to projects that either are complete or phases have been completed, and there have been no issues. Steve Brown Apartments, Arrowhead Pharmaceutical, the agreement with Livesey, where all of those public improvements were made out by the tech park. 2 phases for Ardent Glen, a residential subdivision. 2 phases for Kettle Creek North, another residential subdivision. 3 phases for the Woods at Cathedral Point, another residential subdivision. There's been no issues with respect to whether or not work is substantially completed. You never hear about this because it's handled at an administrative level. I'm not going to get into the public comments. I certainly appreciate the arguments that the developer is making. I'm not here to criticize them. I am here to say that I disagree with them. I don't believe that this work is substantially complete. And the reason, there's many reasons I say that, but when you look at the addendum 2, okay, that's in the agreement. And let me just get to that. Sorry, I'm no good without a mouse. It has work that's identified in the plans that still need to be done. So as Jamie noted, there's certain work that, in discussions with the developer, city staff said, we can try to push that to a Phase 1B. We don't want to push that to a Phase 2, but we'll try to give you a little bit more time. But when you look at the list of work, not only do you have work that still needs to get done in Phase 1, pursuant to the plans that are approved, We also have other work, and I'm just going to identify a few, where we know that there's defects. Remove and replace broken curb and gutter, including areas near path crossing at Morning Cove Circle. Remove and replace broken sidewalk squares, various locations. Remove and replace broken water valve box. I'm not aware of any municipality that accepts public improvements when we know that there are defects with them. And that's consistent with the language in the development agreement. So the development agreement lays out this process of inspection and acceptance and a guarantee period. Here's the first sentence of the guarantee period. The developer guarantees all improvements against defects which appear within a period of 1 year from the date of acceptance. Defects which appear within a period of 1 year from acceptance. We know about these defects right now. That's why they should be fixed right now. And under normal circumstances, they would. If this work had been done during the summer and it was completed, let's say in August, the inspection would have occurred, we would have gone through, we would have noticed it, they would have had time to fix it, and it would have been completed. For whatever reason, the work was not started in the summer. As far as I'm aware, it was started in late October of 2024, and that's just the most recent work. The other thing that I would say is this development agreement was signed November 4th of 2021. The agreement says they have 18 months to complete the public improvements. That's April 4th of 2023. We are almost 2 years past that deadline. Reference was made to certain meetings before the council. We also had meetings where we contemplated drawing on the letter of credit. We didn't. And I think the reason why we didn't do that, or at least one of the reasons, was the thought process is we have an agreement with the developer. Let's see the developer honor that agreement. That's all city staff is asking for right now. And in fact, city staff is recommending a modification of the agreement because city staff is saying, hey, we can take a few bullet points and move them to phase 1B in an effort to try to get them their building permits a little bit sooner. But there's other work that fundamentally needs to be done as part of phase 1. It's in the plans. They are defects. And if we make we have an obligation to treat everybody the same. No other developer has come to you and asked for an accommodation of this nature. But if you grant this, we certainly can't say that that's not going to happen in the future. City staff has worked with them. We've had some positive meetings, and I think we've gone as far as we can go. The other thing that I would say is, and obviously you guys have the discretion to make this decision, but if you go with them as opposed to what city staff is saying, you're cutting the legs out from city staff. And I would tell you right now that this has never been before you in 20 years, as far as I'm aware. As soon as you do, if you approve this, what do you think is going to happen the next time that city staff has a disagreement with a developer? The developer is going to say, all right, that's fine, I appreciate where you're coming from, let me go to the council. So, and in that situation, you'd have the ability to approve what they're asking. But this does not come before you. To be honest, I don't even get involved in acceptance and inspection. This is the one time in my 20 years with the city where I've had to get involved with acceptance and inspection and all of this nature. So I'll leave it at that. And I mean, there's some other things that I can say, but I'm not going to pile on at this point. Certainly willing to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Questions, comments, or motions from the council? Alder Lytle.
I'm not sure if we have the correct city staff here to answer this question, but I was curious, looking at the appendix attachment that city attorney was referring to, how city staff, what criteria city staff use to identify the items that could be moved to phase 1B versus the items that remain in phase 1?
Mr. Manning?
Well, I mean, I guess I would I think that was a give by city staff, to be quite honest. It was, I mean, city staff definitely could have taken the position of let me step back. Every public improvements agreement that we have says that the public improvements are going to have to be done pursuant to plans that have been approved by city staff. The items that are in what city staff is willing to move to phase 1B are in the plans to be done in phase 1. Developer said they were having some issues with respect to getting materials and things of that nature. And so I think, for example, when you look at the force main pump house, that's why there's a phrase there that says provide temporary cover measures, because if we're going to do this, we want some temporary work to be done. But that was a give. In other words, it was a way for the city staff to try to work with the developer to try to accommodate some of their requests. But at the end of the day, this is all work that is, according to the agreement that's been executed, should be done in phase one.
That's helpful, and I'm not trying to have any second guessing in terms of complying with an agreement that was already executed, but I was curious. I don't know if Mr. Manning has some perspectives on this as far as, it appears that some of the items in 1B are a long lead time. Some of them, apparently apply to sequencing of construction and that kind of thing. Beyond that, I'm just curious if there were at a high level, the process city staff used to identify what could be pushed to 1B.
Mr. Manning?
So you're right. Some of it is logistics and some of it is just taking longer to construct, or some of it to manufacture. So some of the pieces that are still remaining, they've been ordered. We have approximate delivery times on there. They just can't be installed until they're actually here on site for some of that. The wetland items, we know that takes time to actually get them established, make sure they're growing like they should, and that we get a good final product out of it. The rest of the items, the reason that we would not be in favor of completing them right now is it's not the right season. For the ground is still frozen. We're not looking to pour a bunch of concrete on frozen ground. We can't get asphalt. It's just not the right time of year to be doing some of the work. Even some of the simple things, some of the things as simple as the restoration and installing the topsoil. Topsoil's frozen. It's hard to produce a good final product when you don't have. Unfortunately, if you wait a few months, it gets immensely easier and your final product turns out a lot better. And I guess that's some of the perspective that we have on the items and how they're divided up between the two categories.
That's helpful. And I guess I'm going to paraphrase what you said, and please correct me if the items that remain in phase one are items that, maybe aren't ideally performed this time of year, but conceivably could still happen on an expedited schedule. The items in 1B are things that would kind of be wasted effort if they were attempted at all prior to.
And 1B, they couldn't be because they're not physically here. I mean, the hatch is still being constructed. The sluice gate is, scheduled for arrival, and a lot of the wetland restoration, this is not the right time to be doing any type of wetland restoration. The other items you're correct on is, could you pour concrete right now? Sure. You go out there, you'd put some heat on it, you'd pull the frost out of the ground, you'd prep the base. You can do it. If you wait 2 months, you don't have to do any of that first part, you can just pour it. So it's a weird dilemma based on where we are in the season and what is required still to be constructed. And that's a problem is, like Attorney Kleinmeyer said, is if this was August, this is easy. This is easy stuff. It's not August, it's February. It becomes immensely more difficult because of where we are in the season.
And then just last one. This was not a situation where the developer was asking for city staff to come out, do these inspections, and because of our staff availability or scheduling or anything, they had to wait for 3-4 months for that. This was, we reached that point and we had folks out there, or we had folks out there.
There's been, I guess there's been a lot of coordination and collaboration and multiple meetings and multiple site visits and multiple discussions, and it never seems to end. And it has been a chore on my staff for as much time as it's taking to get to this point, and the number of lists that we produced and the number of times we've had to go out there and verify, and it's quite amazing of how many times we've had to be on this particular project that's sucking resources to take us away from doing anything else. There's a lot of stuff that we need to get done. And I task my guys with doing that, and I put it on myself to try to get this to happen. And it feels like we're just out here constantly trying to get this thing across the finish line, and it feels like that should not be our responsibility. For us, it should be a yes or a no, and right now, we're saying it's a no.
Then I'm glad I asked the question, and I appreciate the candid response.
Ms. Fisher, did you have something to add to that as well?
I was just going to note for the items that are moved to 1B, so it's the sluice gate and the wet well cover. The sluice gate is, we've agreed on a technical side, is not really integral to the design until the second phase, just because we don't have the permanent pump station and pump house as part of this phase. So there is a way to temporarily use that force main and pump up to the upper basins, but the phase has been sized small enough that that shouldn't be needed, but it's kind of an emergency measure. For the next phase, we'll see the permanent pump station, and then that sluice gate is there really to seal off a grit manhole for future cleaning. So I think we thought, from a technical aspect, we can, live with that until, well, I guess it would be end of June. The wet well cover, they've got a temporary cover right now. It's like a vehicle grade type heavy cover. Again, not ideal, but we felt like we could, live with that for a few months. And then the planting piece of the infiltration basin is just not a good time of the year to plant. So, it is our responsibility to have and their responsibility to have a working infiltration component of this. But we felt like, if you put the plantings in now, they're really not going to be functional anyway. So they have the basin constructed, it could accept water, and those plantings could come in a few months. So that was part of the reason on the technical side that we felt comfortable moving those to 1B.
Alder Kaiser McHenry.
I have kind of two questions. One is, does engineering or public safety have any material concerns about what isn't done in phase one? Are there safety concerns to the public or the responding public? Or the public that will move into said lots? Or are these cosmetic?
Mr. Manning?
You're talking about what city staff is proposing to move to phase 1B?
I'm asking if anything that's missing right now is materially unsafe in the subdivision that need to be addressed immediately.
Well, I guess maybe I'm missing the question. Because I think the reason why we want all the work to be done before acceptance occurs is because we want the work to be properly completed before the building permits are issued so people can start building their homes. In other words, that's...
I understand, but my question is anything unsafe right now? Materially unsafe from an engineering or public safety standpoint?
The only thing that'd be unsafe would be the cover, the temporary cover for the wet well hatch.
Okay, and why wasn't that ordered years ago when we knew we had this subdivision being built? What was the holdup?
That would be something the developer should have ordered. We don't know what.
We haven't been part of the process since 2001. What, was it not mentioned? Was it not checked? I'm trying to understand how we got to what you said. More than 18 months passed, or, you said it's now 2025. How did we get here today?
Well,
I didn't read all of the diatribe of years and years of, I'm trying to just get a watered down version of.
It just hasn't gotten done in a timely fashion. And, we could have drawn on the letter of credit if we wanted to complete the work, in which case then we probably would have gone through and figured out what this whole list was beforehand, but we didn't. And so why has it not gotten done in a timely fashion? That's only a question the developer can answer.
Then I'd like the developer to answer that.
If someone from FDG wants to take a crack at that?
I'd also I assume the answer for public safety is none. There are none from engineering or public safety side? No grave concerns about public safety or engineering?
Well, since Mr. Andrews up here,
Well, that was the first question. I don't think we got there, but
and then we'll.
Go ahead.
Good evening. Ron Henshu, I'm with Ford Development Group, and really the only one on the Ford Development Group side that's been here since the beginning of this project. So I have a tendency to want to do more history than everybody most times cares to listen to, but let me answer your question directly. We provided some of this information in the email to alders that we sent today. So the original contract was for $3.9 million. The current contract is $5.3 million. As a result of COVID, when construction prices started to change, it increased the contract by 50%. So therefore, we needed to do and secure additional funding in order to complete the contract. And that's what took a significant amount of time. And then as a result of that, we, as Attorney Kleinmeyer has highlighted, are outside of the original terms of the development agreement, but I could provide significant information if you'd like to explain why. But that's what happened.
So then I guess my next question is, why did we not come back to the table to renegotiate any of that? If there was a material change in cost and you had concerns, did the city not know, or we didn't have concerns, so we just didn't talk about it?
I can answer, I mean, it's always a developer cost on a residential subdivision, so.
I understand that, but if there was a material increase of what he's saying, I suspect he told somebody that.
I'm not aware of anybody at the city being told that. I guess the contract was executed in 2021, it's post-COVID. There's no reason for the city to believe that there's any problems with the development based on the number of developments that we've had done during this time period, and there were no issues with those developers. And so, I mean, if they had come to the city, obviously we would have listened, but I think the answer would have been, you signed an agreement. If you want to get, phase one moving forward, you have to get your agreement. You have to, I mean, the public improvements have to get done no matter what, whether the cost increases or not.
And I understand that. Again, I think the crux of the issue is, was there communication between the developer and the city beyond what the list that just became evident? We're not aware of any communication that you spoke to the city and said, we're struggling here to find funding?
Is that a question?
That's a question.
Okay. Because of the increase, we came to the city and asked that the force main be delayed until phase 2, which is what was the reason for the request in February of 2024.
So just last year.
Yes, a year ago.
So then what happened between 21 and 24? Why did that request, why was there such a delay in the request to move the timeline? And maybe I've missed this, so please correct me if I've missed something in all the, there's a lot of documents here to look at.
No, I mean, what I would say is, I mean, I'm not sure if it's routine for developers to have this much of a cost increase, but definitely cost increase for them. And essentially, as an attorney, I probably wouldn't hear about it. I'm not sure if Adam would have heard about it prior to Jamie, or if Jamie heard about it, but developers just say, all right, well, it's a cost increase, we're going to have to take it on, and we do it.
Yeah, I just would think that there'd be some communication. And if there was, what happened to it and where did it go? I'm just trying to ascertain where this fell apart and others didn't. You claimed there were, what, 16?
Well, there was 10 that I just looked at.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, how can 10 go perfectly and one not? That's what I'm trying to get to. I can't reason that in my head.
Well, I'm trying not to give the
And I'm a
answer.
pretty educated person. I guess it just sounds to me like there wasn't enough communication prior to 2024 than when you knew you were short on cash.
I believe we communicated throughout issues that were occurring, and they, depending on what the issue was, continued to change the time frame for getting the project complete. And we did our best to communicate those things, I think. Whether they're specific enough for everybody to understand, or there's been changes in people who have been involved on the project on both sides. The delay has created the challenge that we sit here with today.
Okay. Nothing further.
Other questions, comments, or motions from the council? Alder Humke.
Yeah. This is my district. And I've read this and I've listened to what Mr. Kleinmeyer has said. I obviously want, the people who have these properties to move into those properties, right? I want them to build. But to Mr. Kleinmeyer's point, there's been 10 other developments that have come in and we haven't had these types of issues. And I understand that you're saying that this development is unique, but I don't understand how unique it could possibly be in comparison to other developments that have come through here. And I believe that we need to hold the line in terms of that we're consistent. Even if it is my district and I would love this to happen, I have to think about what's best for the city as going forward. And I don't want to be dealing with this with other developers. I think it's irresponsible. It's not our responsibility. It makes me frustrated, super frustrated to hear that Mr. Manning and his staff are spending an inordinate amount of time on this project when you're a business owner. It also makes me super frustrated to hear when I talk to Mr. Olick about questions I have about other business going on in the city that he's dedicating multiple weeks of time as well as his staff. That is not our responsibility. So I will not be voting for this. I will be voting for what is currently in the motion, but not including the request that you're looking for.
Questions, comments, or motions from the council? Alder Tucker-Long.
So is the First Amendment to Whispering Coves Phase 1 development agreement, that is the potential motion in the packet, is that the one staff is approving or is recommending, or is that?
Yeah, that's the one staff's
That's the one
recommending.
staff's
It does
recommending.
not include the request
It does
from
not.
FDG that was raised during public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in the packet. So, if you're inclined to make a motion to approve the version proposed by city staff, I would just be motion to approve the First Amendment to Whispering Coves Phase 1 development as proposed by city staff.
Okay. In that case, I move to approve the First Amendment to Whispering Coves Phase 1 development agreement as proposed by staff.
Motion by Alder Tucker-Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Braithwaite. Motion before the body. Anything to add, Alder Tucker-Long?
No, nothing further to add.
Okay. Motion before the body. Questions or comments? Alder Kaiser McHenry.
Just one more question for staff. I know we have passed 10 of these in the last, but have there been any that have had any significant concerns like this? I know there's always a laundry list, right? But were there any that we even had to nudge a little bit in your time? Well, you're new to the agency, but I guess engineering-wise, is this just a consistent thing? This one just grew a little bit bigger than the others?
Ms. Fisher?
So, caveat, I'm not involved on the inspection side. So what I have seen in the past is that there's typically a punch list developed, and it's usually kind of, the time frames are usually not, I don't think I've seen it this time of the year. And then from there, those punch list items are addressed, and then there's final acceptance after that point. And so I think that's, they're getting to that point, but, just given the time of the year, it's made it a little bit more difficult on this one, which is why we're having the conversation.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not advocating that we should spend any more staff time on this. We spent way too much staff time on it. But I'm just trying to figure out the material of, is this going to happen again? Even if we vote the correct way tonight, was there a stumbling block that got us to where we are in this specific project? And I think we know there are, but I like to look forward on what we're going to do to make sure that let's not have this happen again, so that we don't have to have this contentious time and our administrators spend 90% of his day doing this or whatever it is. In engineering and public works, let's just try to prevent it. I'm just trying to learn about why, that's all.
Sorry, was that a question or? Okay. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Alder Hochst.
I'll keep it brief, but I think what Alder Kaiser McHenry is getting at, right, is my question is, so if we approve this today, are we back here in 2 or 3 months again, right? We've all been here. I've been here for 4 years. We've dealt with this constantly, right? It's constant. So it's a track record of missing deadlines that FDG has agreed to themselves, right? By years, not months, like years. Continually coming back to council over and over and over with the same ask, right? We give direction, and it's the same ask, right? It's a lack of caring for deadlines, right? And like not even making good faith efforts to actually start things. I think it's disrespectful to the council, to the city staff, to our, like the clients that bought the houses, right? They deserve to have homes that they thought would be built years ago, right? So, I mean, I want to get this moving along, but I honestly think it would be reckless to do business with them again going forward, right? That's not what we're voting on today, but that's just my opinion. Just because I've never seen anything go down in this fashion. So I'll keep it brief. Thank you.
Alder Braithwaite, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the letter dated April 22nd, 2024, provided by Forward Development Group with the timeline of completion of completing all the improvements in 2024 by June 28th of 2024. That wasn't met. So obviously there was a lot of time for construction between June 28th and when they started in October, apparently. And then, you know, sort of blame it on the weather seems kind of disingenuous. So it looks like there was a plan. The plan wasn't met. I wasn't part of council during that time, but the city and the developer had kind of agreed to that plan back in April of 2024, but yet the plan wasn't met. So I think, you know, another example of good faith effort from the city trying to kind of reach conclusion on this project, but you know, we're not the developer.
Motion before the body. Questions or comments from the council? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the First Amendment to the Whispering Coves Phase 1 Development Agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. With that, we will move on to item 12, which is adjournment.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Hoeks. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Humke. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 8:12 p.m. Thank you, everyone.